January 1945. In the bone-piercing cold of a French pine forest, you open your eyes and realize you are an American soldier preparing to cross the Rhine, the final barrier before the heart of Germany. Artillery rumbles in the distance, the ground is locked in ice, and ahead lies a life-or-death moment that will help decide the fate of Europe. Do you have the courage to survive and witness history turn? The first sensation is the cold, an almost living thing that slips past wool and skin to nest in your bones. You wake not in a bed, but on ground so frozen it might as well be iron. Your single blanket is stiff with frost rimmed in brittle ice. When you inhale the air, bites your lungs a mix of pine gunpowder and that faintly sweet metallic smell of death you wish you could forget. You blink and realize that the snow has fallen even while you slept, soft white layers settling over your helmet and rifle like a burial shroud. The forest is quiet in that ominous way of places on the edge of violence. A cough to your left, a muffled curse to your right. Somewhere close, someone prays under their breath. It's January 1945 in the Colmar pocket of eastern France, a pocket of German resistance so stubborn it has become the last major stronghold west of the Rhine. To Berlin, it's a lifeline. To the Allies, a splinter that must be yanked out no matter the cost. You're part of Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Division. 2 years of relentless combat from Sicily to Italy to France has pared your unit from over 100 men to barely 40. You're lucky to be among them, though luck is a strange word here. Your body protests as you sit up. Joints creak like frozen hinges. Every movement is a negotiation with pain, your back compressed by earth that never softened your shoulders stiff from nights spent bracing against the cold. You rub your hands together, friction barely sparking warmth through your gloves. The landscape stretches around you, dark pines heavy with snow, their branches sagging like exhausted sentries. Mist hovers low, a gauze over open fields that lead toward the village of Holzwihr. Somewhere beyond that pale haze, German artillery crouches like wolves. The silence is treacherous. You know how quickly it can shatter. Beside you, a steel helmet rests on the ground, its surface so cold it could tear skin if touched barehanded. Your boots, army-issue leather cracking at the seams, are soaked through. Wool socks haven't been dry since Christmas. You shift your toes and feel little in response. Someone stirs in the next foxhole. A match flares briefly, painting the trees in orange light. Coldest winter in decades, an older sergeant mutters. He's right. Records will later show Europe hadn't seen a winter like this in half a century, the kind that starves engines and freezes rivers solid enough to bear tanks. You listen to the small chorus of mourning, the hiss of breath through chapped lips, the rattle of a canteen, the quiet click of a safety catch. This is the rhythm of a unit that has learned to survive by routine. No heroics, just the next minute, the next hour. You drag your pack closer. Inside, what passes for your lifeline, a first aid packet, a few grenades, clips for the M1 Garand, and a half-frozen canteen. The rifle itself lies across your lap, 8-round clip seated snugly. You stroke the wood stock with a kind of reverence. It's the most reliable thing in this forest. A sergeant trudges past, his breath puffing white. Scouts spotted movement in the village, he says to no one in particular. Could be nothing. Could be something. His words fall like snow, soft and heavy with meaning. Everyone hears. No one answers. The horizon lightens almost imperceptibly. Dawn is coming, but the sun offers no comfort. You tighten your scarf and draw a deeper breath, tasting pine and smoke. Another day begins, not with alarms or gentle rays through curtains, but with the knowledge that somewhere out there, men are preparing to kill you, and you will have to stop them first. You move because movement is warmth. The foxhole, more a shallow scrape than a proper pit, gives up its thin shelter as you ease out, boots crunching on crusted snow. The ground is iron hard, refusing spade or entrenching tool. You remember the first night here when men tried to dig, and the blades only rang against permafrost. In summer, this soil would yield. In January, it laughs and throws sparks. The mess area is only a wider gap between trees where smoke can disperse without drawing too much attention. A cook narrow-shouldered beneath a mountain of layers coaxes a stingy flame under a squat tin of coffee. He might as well be tending a holy relic for the way men drift in and wait with cupped hands and hollow faces. When your turn comes, the coffee is closer to mud than drink tepid brown tasting of grit and rust. You savor it anyway. Caffeine isn't flavor out here, it's a fuse you relight. A corporal cheeks raw from wind counts out K rations from a damp crate. You get the morning's offering a box that promises menu 5 and delivers once pried open with a bayonet. A chocolate bar turned to granite biscuits designed by an engineer who hated teeth. A packet of powdered eggs the color of faded yolk, and a pair of cigarettes that smell like a memory. Your stomach doesn't grumble, it clenches. Fuel is fuel. You eat because your hands need the calories your mouth does not want. The sergeant returns snow sifting off his shoulders. U-shaped woodlot open field ahead. He mutters half to you and half to the map in his head. Village a mile. Tracks on the road from the night treads not rubber. They were moving. He glances up. Dig where you can, boys. Keep low. The ground won't help you, so make your body smaller. Someone cracks a joke that dies in the air. Even humor freezes here. Back at your scrape, you run the rifle's action and thumb each cartridge in your pouches like rosary beads. 8 rounds in the clip. The old rhythm fire, recover sight, fire, living in your muscles. The M1 Garand is American stubbornness made steel. It fires in the cold, asks for oil and respect, returns your faith with reliability. You field strip it on instinct, laying the pieces across a folded scarf to keep them from kissing the ice. The bolt gleams dull in the weak light as you wipe it with an oily rag, each stroke a prayer for the next hour. Your canteen, half frozen, makes a slush sound when you shake it. You crack the cap and tip a few mouthfuls of water that bites your tongue with iodine, a flavor you've learned to accept as the taste of not getting sick. You tap your boot heels together to wake the feet inside. They answer with pins and needles, blessed proof of circulation. You think about socks the way a banker thinks about gold. Dry as everything. A medic once said more men fall to wetness and cold than to bullets in winters like this. You believed him then and more now. You roll your shoulders and scan the line. Foxholes blot the tree line like dark coin slits. A man you don't know by name but recognized by silhouette rubs his temples and stares across the field. Another counts clips without looking, lips moving with the numbers. Someone else holds a photograph at chest height, not to study the faces. He already knows them, but to feel two-dimensional warmth radiate outward. Small rituals, small anchors. Company B, someone says softly, as if to test whether the unit still exists when spoken aloud. You think of the version that hit the beaches in Italy. Fresh boots, clean, webbing the nervous energy of men whose ideas of war had not yet met its weight. You were a different person then, and you carry little eulogies in your pocket for the ones who didn't make the trip from Sicily to here. When you sleep, their boots walk beside your dreams. A shape cuts through the mist, boyish, compact, calm. Lieutenant Audie Murphy moves along the positions with that careful economy that makes men trust him. He's not a big talker, not a hand-on-shoulder preacher of courage. He says what matters and lets the rest live in his eyes. He pauses at the lip of your scrape and studies the field. His breath shows as steady white clouds. Keep your head down today, he says, not as a warning, but as a fact of arithmetic. You nod. He nods back already somewhere else in his mind, angles, arcs of fire routes of approach. He taps the side of your foxhole with his glove and moves on. You finish your cigarettes with the solemnity of a rite. Smoke threads your throat and thins the cold. A rookie 2 holes down Jenkins fumbles his lighter, and without discussion, 3 matches slide across the snow to him from different directions. The way men share out here would shame the generosity of peacetime. You learn that what you hoard can't save you the way what you pass along sometimes does. The forest gives you a muted panorama of the field beyond. It's a painter's study in whites and grays snow, undisturbed, except for a black seam where the road cleaves through hedges like charcoal smudges, roofs of Holzfire hunched in the mist like sleeping cattle. Somewhere beyond the village, a church steeple lifts a dark finger into the low sky. The world almost looks innocent from this distance, and that is the cruelest trick of all. You spoon the powdered eggs into your mess tin and stir them with your bayonet, a parody of breakfast. They taste like damp cardboard with ideas above their station. Still, when you swallow, a thread of warmth unwinds in your middle. It's enough to sharpen your sight to steady your forearms on the rim of the foxhole. You remember a diner in Ohio, eggs snapping and butter, coffee that shook hands with your heart and said, "Good morning." The memory is less a ache than a compass point now. You don't let it pull you off course. Someone down the line coughs hard and then harder. The cough becomes a bark, and a medic is there as if the trees themselves had produced him, pressing a tin of something that smells medicinal into the man's palm, then moving on with the pace and patience of a winter saint. You've learned that the medics are the bravest men here. They walk where the rounds walk and do it unarmed, except for a bag that fights the same enemy by different means. A runner arrives, cheeks flayed red by wind eyes bright with task focus. S2 says movement in Holtzvier. He huffs. Tracks headed out last night, traffic back in before dawn. Armor noise reported not confirmed. Hold primary prep secondary. Artillery listening. He plants that bundle of words like stakes, then sprints back into the timber. Men exchange glances, but not opinions. The war will tell you its opinion shortly enough. You measure distance with your eyes until it feels like a tape embedded in your skull. From the lip of the wood to the first fence line, 200 yards flat. From fence to the first cottage, another 100. You imagine lanes of fire, how the MG-42s will rake like a scythe. You trace in your mind the staggered leaps your squad would have to make 5 forward, while the other 5 cover then switch a lethal hopscotch across a whiteboard where mistakes are written in blood. The wind shifts and drags a curtain of mist aside. For a heartbeat, the village stands in sharper relief. You see a shutter twitch, nothing else moves. Your eye learns to distrust single anomalies. Sometimes a curtain is only cloth, and sometimes it is the patience of a man behind glass. You reseat your helmet and test the strap under your chin. You press the heel of your glove to the flat of your back where the cold likes to sneak in. Your fingers find the reassuring geometry of grenade spoons and pins hanging like iron fruit from your webbing. You count again, 4 clips left pouch, 4 right one in the rifle. A small arithmetic against the larger equation moving on the far side of the field. Remember, the platoon sergeant says in a voice that doesn't carry so much as settle your body as your foxhole. Ground won't give you depth today, so get it some other way. Lower your heart to the earth when you can. Keep your faces out of the sky. He squats on his heels, looking over the field like a farmer judging a crop that'll kill him. And check your feet. If you don't feel them, you don't own them. You flex yours again and wince. The pain is a poor friend, but it talks to you. You dig out a dry pair of socks from a waxed packet you've guarded like contraband. You swap them fast, crouched 1 foot at a time, steaming pale toes pressed under an armpit to wake the blood. You rub them roughly, circulation sings back thin, but there. The wet pair you wedge inside your jacket, the heat of your chest, the only dryer the army will issue today. A jay lands on a branch overhead and scolds you with ridiculous outrage as if you have violated some forest code of etiquette. You almost laugh at the sanity of it, birds complaining about people as if the world were ordinary and there were only breadcrumbs and boundary lines to argue. The bird lifts away with a flash, and the sound it leaves behind is deeper quiet. Your mind wants to run ahead into the day, but you pull it back. The trick you've learned, maybe the only one that works consistently, is to live in the width of a minute. 30 seconds is too tight. Your breath will snatch. 5 minutes is too broad. Fear will pour in. 1 minute is human-sized. You live there on a small square of time with 4 clean edges. You lay your tools inside it. You arrange your courage so it will be within reach. Murphy appears again, conferring with the radio man. The handset looks too big against his glove. He listens without blinking, nods once, hands it back. "Artillery's awake," the radio man whispers as he slides past your hole. "If you see a crowd of helmets, give them something to think about." You picture the battery somewhere behind you, men stamping their feet, adjusting fuses with numb fingers, a corporal reading off numbers that turn steel into arithmetic. A flake of snow drifts down and lands on the heel of your glove, melts immediately against wool that's warmer than the air by a degree you've bought with movement. You realize in a small rush that you have finished every morning ritual there is to finish, the work before the work is done. Now there is only waiting, which is the hardest work of all. You rest your cheek against the Garand's stock cheekbone to wood and aim at nothing in particular, a fence post, the edge of a window frame, to let your eye remember what steady means. The front sight settles a black square shouldered against the world. Breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, you count the rise and fall, 1, 2, 3. There's a strange kind of peace in that lungs moving heart, measuring beats, the body rehearsing old, honest tasks. A breath of wind slides through the trees and turns the pages of the day. Somewhere behind the mist, engines complain, a far rhythmic growl like a saw biting into green timber. You don't lift your head, you only listen. You think of the ground again and how it will not take a shovel. You think of the U-shaped woods and how your company is the bottom of that letter curved around absence. Eyes open. Someone says softly along the line, passing the words like a canteen. You ease your helmet down a touch and settle your elbows. The cold has found the gaps in your clothes again, but you are done bargaining with it. You will give it the warmth of your breath and the heat of your hands and nothing else. The first low thump you feel more than hear, artillery reaching its hands out to knead the far edge of the village. The sound comes back through the trees like a rumor. You glance left and right, taking attendance with your eyes. Men are smaller than the day, but they hunch against it and hold. You hold with them. And for a single narrow minute, your minute, you let the world shrink to the circle of your sights, the weight of your rifle, the slow count of breath. The field waits. The village holds its tongue. The cold presses close, possessive and patient. You wait back, neither friend nor enemy, just a man at the edge of woods practicing steadiness in a world built to shake. The forest seems to inhale with you, a slow breath that carries the metallic tang of distant machinery. At first, you think it's the usual background rumble of artillery, but there's a different pulse to it. Mechanical, layered, faint, and rhythmic. Engines. You trade a glance with the soldier in the next foxhole, his eyebrows lifting in silent confirmation. Something is stirring beyond the mist. Then a figure breaks the half-light Lieutenant Audie Murphy, moving with that compact, deliberate stride that soldiers recognize and trust. He's a small man, 5'5", maybe 110 pounds. But the air around him feels steadier, as though the chaos bends just slightly to let him pass. Frost beads along the brim of his helmet. He stops beside your scrape and crouches low, scanning the field with sharp, watchful eyes. Keep your head down today, he says quietly, voice even, almost conversational. Something feels off. He gives you a curt nod, then continues down the line, checking positions with the calm efficiency of a man twice his age. You watch him go, aware of the contradictions wrapped inside that slight frame. He looks young enough to be a high school kid, clean features, barely old enough to shave. But his reputation is already legend in the regiment. 2 silver stars, 2 bronze stars, a distinguished service cross. Men still talk about Anzio, where he silenced a German machine gun nest by himself, and the firefight in southern France where he picked off 2 snipers and another machine gun position before most men even found cover. Some say he's fearless. Others whisper he has a death wish. Maybe both are true. What you know is that when he moves through the line, men sit a little straighter, breathe a little easier. Leadership isn't always about loud orders. It's the quiet gravity that steadies a platoon when the air itself vibrates with tension. You check your rifle again, not because it needs it, but because the ritual steadies you. 8 rounds in the clip. Smooth, action sight, post, clear. A glance at your ammo pouches, 4 full clips on the left, 4 on the right, 1 in the rifle. Enough for a fight you'd rather not meet. Your canteen sloshes faintly when you shake it, half-frozen water knocking against metal like a slow heartbeat. A low whistle threads through the trees, the signal to tighten the perimeter. Men hunch deeper into their foxholes helmets, settling lower eyes fixed on the pale horizon. The morning mist clings to the open field like smoke from a giant's pipe. You measure the distance again, 200 yards of flat snow between the tree line and the first stone houses of Holzwehr. No cover except the occasional fence post or hay cart, all of which will draw fire the instant anyone moves. The sound grows a layered growl, now unmistakable. Engines, heavy. Not the high-pitched whine of jeeps or the stutter of trucks, but a deeper chest-rattling thrum that you feel through the frozen earth. Someone whispers the word, "You've been avoiding tanks." You shift your weight and scan the field. The mist is thinning as the weak sun lifts. At first there's nothing, just gray light on white snow. Then a darker shadow slides into view. Another follows and another, until 6 hulking shapes emerge like monsters from a child's nightmare. Panthers, you realize with a hard swallow. German steel, broad-shouldered and implacable, their turrets swinging lazily as they crawl forward. Behind them, scattered skirmish lines of infantry spread across the field, black dots moving with terrifying precision. Hundreds of men. The odds clang in your mind like a struck bell, 40 of you maybe against hundreds of them and 6 tanks. Jesus Christ, someone breathes. Lieutenant Murphy reappears, a steady presence amid the rising panic. He crouches by the radio man, speaking into the field telephone with clipped efficiency. "Artillery coordinates," he says, voice low but firm. "Get them now." You watch his shoulders tighten, the only outward sign of strain. The forest explodes with the first incoming shells. German artillery finds your position and the world becomes splintered. Sound trees shattering snow and dirt erupting in violent geysers. You throw yourself flat, pressing into the frozen ground as fragments whip overhead like angry hornets. The air is a storm of noise and flying wood. You taste sap and iron on your tongue. A shout slices through the chaos. They're coming. You risk a glance and see the Panthers grinding forward, snow churning beneath their tracks. The supporting infantry fans out, rifles flashing in the bleak light. You can feel their momentum, the grim inevitability of mass and steel. Company B has 2 M10 tank destroyers in support. One fires from the narrow road leading to the village, its gun barking sharp and fast. The shell slams into the lead Panther's glacis plate with a metallic scream and bounces off harmlessly. Another shot follows and another, but the German armor shrugs them aside like pebbles. Then a flash, a deafening crack. The first M10 takes a direct hit. Flames roar from the turret, the commander and gunner vanishing in an instant of white fire. The surviving crew bails out, running for the woods as the vehicle belches black smoke. The second M10 fires, repositions, fires again. Its shells glance off the enemy armor sparks against a wall of iron. It tries to back into deeper cover, but the road is slick with ice. The vehicle skids sideways, its treads slipping into a drainage ditch where it bellies out, the barrel angling uselessly toward the sky. Murphy's voice cuts through the din. Fall back to secondary line. Move. His tone is calm, but the order is a blade of urgency. You understand immediately. The position is lost. There's a stronger defensive line a few hundred meters deeper in the woods, but someone must stay behind to slow the German advance. You scramble from the foxhole, crouching low as you move through the trees. Branches whip your helmet, snow showers your shoulders. The ground bucks under the relentless pounding of artillery. Behind you, the M10 in the ditch continues to fire a lonely defiance against impossible odds. Then, through the haze of smoke and flying snow, you see something that makes you stop, despite every instinct screaming for movement. Lieutenant Murphy has not fallen back. He stands beside the crippled M10 radio handset pressed to his ear, calmly relaying coordinates for artillery support. Bullets snap around him, tracers slicing the air, but he doesn't flinch. He waves the retreating men onward with a single sharp gesture, then climbs onto the burning vehicle. For a heartbeat, the scene freezes, a small man silhouetted against a tower of black smoke fire, reflecting off his helmet. Then he swings behind the mounted .50 caliber machine gun and opens fire. The gun's deep, throat-shaking roar rips through the forest. German infantry crumples in swaths, the heavy rounds tearing through trees and men alike. Murphy moves with an almost mechanical precision, sweeping the barrel in wide arcs, brass casings cascading around him like molten rain. The burning tank destroyer rocks with each enemy shell that slams into its hull, but he stays upright, unyielding. Artillery screams overhead. American guns now crashing into the German ranks with earth-shattering concussions. The air smells of cordite and scorched metal. Smoke boils across the snow, thick and acrid, turning daylight to a dim, flickering twilight. You duck behind a shattered pine trunk, heart-hammering eyes fixed on the lone figure astride the flaming machine. Twice, you think he's gone once. When a shell detonates so close, the explosion lifts him off his feet again when a cloud of smoke swallows the turret whole. Twice, he reappears, still firing, still calling corrections into the field telephone. The Germans waver. Their advance slows, then stalls under the withering crossfire of Murphy's .50 cal and the raining American artillery. Panthers grind to a halt, infantry dropping into the snow, pinned by a single man's fury. Around you, soldiers whisper disbelief. Someone mutters, "He's a damn one-man army." Another crosses himself. You can only watch, torn between awe and terror, as Murphy holds the line alone. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, but can only be minutes, the German attack falters. Infantry melts back toward the village. The Panthers pivot, retreating behind a curtain of smoke and sporadic covering fire. The battlefield quiets to a low, angry hiss of burning steel and distant artillery echoes. Murphy climbs down at last, limping slightly from a leg wound you hadn't seen inflicted. He slings the smoking .50 cal to safe and steps off the tank destroyer as if leaving a porch after evening chores. Without a word, he gestures for the company to reform and counterattack. You exhale for the first time in what feels like hours, lungs burning with the sudden rush of air. Around you, men stir disbelief etched into soot-streaked faces. The impossible has just happened, and you are alive to witness it. You follow the others back toward the shattered tree-lined boots, crunching in churned snow, rifle still warm in your hands. Behind you, the burning M10 hisses and pops a pyre, marking the spot where one man stopped an army. The woods swallow you again, but the echoes of that stand one man defying tanks and a company of infantry still vibrate in your chest. Even as you retreat to the secondary line, you keep glancing back through the haze, half expecting Murphy to still be on that turret smoke curling around him like a dark halo. It's not hero worship. It's the disbelief of a soldier who has seen the impossible and is trying to fold it into the shape of reality. Orders ripple quietly down the line. Dig in, check ammo, re-establish fields of fire. The men obey with a kind of weary precision that comes from endless repetition. Bayonets and entrenching tools chip at the frozen ground, sparks leaping where steel meets ice. The earth is unyielding, but you scrape anyway, carving out inches of protection. Every shallow groove feels like a thin promise of survival. Your breath fogs the air as you pull off one glove to reload. Fingers stiff, you thumb cartridges into an M1 clip. 1, 2, 3, each click a small prayer. Around you, others do the same, the soft metallic chorus of men preparing for whatever comes next. A medic crouches beside a private whose leg oozes dark blood through torn fabric. He works with brisk economy, his movements gentle but certain. The smell of iodine mingles with pine and gunpowder. Across the shallow trench, Jenkins, the young replacement you barely knew yesterday, struggles to steady his hands as he cleans the snow from his rifle's action. You catch his eye and offer a tight nod. He returns it, jaw clenched, and goes back to the task. He's learning fast. Fear is the harshest instructor. Above artillery thuds from the American rear lines, a distant drumbeat that steadies your racing heart. The barrage moves outward, probing the fields where the German attack dissolved. Each detonation sends a faint vibration through the frozen ground, as if the earth itself is breathing with you. Then comes the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of home, but a tense, listening stillness, the world holding its breath. You feel the weight of it pressing down heavy as the sky. Snowflakes drift lazily indifferent to the men crouched below with rifles ready. The cold has teeth again, biting through layers of wool and canvas. A soft voice breaks the hush. Coffee. Someone offers. Holding out a battered tin cup. The liquid inside is lukewarm and bitter as mud, but you take it with murmured thanks. The warmth slides down your throat, a fragile comfort that feels almost luxurious in this frozen hell. You shift, stretching cramped legs, and catch sight of Murphy moving along the line. His face is smudged with soot, a faint streak of dried blood along his cheek, but his eyes are steady, scanning each position with that quiet intensity. He stops to speak with the platoon sergeant, then kneels beside a wounded man checking the bandage himself before moving on. There's no flourish, no speech, just presence. It's enough. When he reaches your foxhole, he crouches low. "Good work back there," he says simply, his breath forming small clouds in the icy air. "Resupply's coming soon. Keep your eyes open. They may try again." You nod, the only answer necessary. He moves on a compact silhouette against the drifting smoke. The hours stretch. You lose track of time except for the subtle shift of light as afternoon tilts toward evening. The forest around you becomes a dim cathedral of frozen trunks and pale sky. Your thoughts wander despite yourself to warm kitchens and summer grass, to people you love and might never see again. You push the images away. Out here, hope can be a dangerous distraction. A distant rumble announces the arrival of a supply jeep skidding along the icy trail. Fresh ammunition, precious dry socks, and a few tins of rations are handed out with quiet efficiency. You change your socks immediately, rubbing feeling back into your feet as the medic instructed. The small act feels almost decadent, a reminder that survival often comes down to mundane rituals. As dusk falls, the sergeant passes word double the watch. 2 men per position, 4-hour shifts. You're paired with Jenkins. He slides into the foxhole beside you, his youthful face drawn but determined. The cold night settles like a weight as you both hunker down, rifles across your knees, eyes scanning the darkening tree line. For a long time, neither of you speaks. The silence is not empty. It's crowded with every creak of frozen wood, every distant echo that might be enemy movement or only the forest itself. At last Jenkins whispers, "How do you stand it the waiting?" You think before answering. 1 minute at a time, you say quietly, "Don't think about the whole night, just the next breath, the next heartbeat." He nods, pulling his scarf higher over his nose. "I'm scared," he admits. His voice trembles but doesn't break. "Everyone is," you reply. "Only fools and liars say they're not." The conversation dwindles to silence again, but something has shifted a fragile thread of camaraderie in the dark. You share a cigarette, cupping the glow with gloved hands to keep it hidden from distant eyes. The harsh smoke scratches your throat, but the shared warmth steadies you both. The night deepens. Snow begins to fall soft and relentless, muffling the world in white. You and Jenkins take turns on watch, one sleeping in brief, uneasy snatches, while the other keeps vigil. The cold creeps into every seam, numbing fingers and toes, but you endure. There is nothing else to do. Hours pass. Once a deer steps lightly across the clearing, its dark eyes luminous in the moonlight. For a moment, you and the creature regard one another, two living beings in a landscape built for death. Then it bounds away, a ghost vanishing into the pines. Near midnight, a flare arcs into the sky, casting the snow in a harsh, fleeting brilliance. Your heart lurches as you scan the field, but nothing follows. The light fades, leaving a darkness that feels even deeper for its brief interruption. Jenkins shifts beside you, whispering, "Do you think we'll make it home?" You keep your eyes on the tree line. "We fight today. Tomorrow will take care of itself." He exhales a small cloud of steam, perhaps comforted, perhaps not. Together you watch the endless night, listening for the sounds that mean life or death. Somewhere beyond the forest, the enemy regroups. Here in the frozen quiet, you wait, hearts beating, breath slow, the thin line between survival and oblivion, drawn only by vigilance and the will to endure. Dawn arrives not with gentle sunlight, but with a sergeant's boot thumping the rim of your foxhole. Up and at him, he growls, voice hoarse from cold and too many cigarettes. Germans didn't go home just because you're tired. Your body protests every movement. Shoulders feel welded to your spine, knees locked in knots of ice. As you push yourself upright, a shiver racks you so hard your teeth clack like stones. Frost clings to your blanket and to the inside of your helmet where the warmth of your breath froze overnight. Your canteen is a solid block of ice, your boots stiff as wooden clogs. Around you, the men of Company B perform the same painful ritual, flexing numb fingers, rubbing their faces to spark circulation, cursing softly as they coax frozen gear into motion. Somewhere down the line, someone manages to light a cigarette. The tiny flare glows like a distant star in the half-light. You tear open a new K-ration box. Breakfast is a packet of powdered eggs that turns into a pale yellow paste when mixed with a splash of tepid water, 2 rock-hard biscuits, and a chocolate bar so frozen it could chip a tooth. Gourmet dining army style. You chew mechanically, feeding the furnace of your body because the cold burns calories like a second enemy. Lieutenant Murphy appears, moving briskly despite the bandage beneath his pant leg where yesterday's firefight nicked him. His boyish face is gaunt eyes, shadowed with fatigue, yet he carries an energy that commands attention. Any movement from the village, he asks, scanning the pale horizon. "Nothing yet, sir," you reply, breath clouding the air. "They took a beating, but don't assume they're finished," he says. Then moves down the line, checking each position with the same quiet intensity that makes men trust him with their lives. The morning stretches into a cold gray monotony, hours of hurry up and wait. You clean your M1 Garand again, oiling the action so it won't freeze. The rifle's weight is reassuring in your hands, solid, familiar, a partner that asks only care and delivers reliability in return. Around noon, the welcome growl of a jeep cuts through the stillness. Mail and supplies. The quartermaster's grin is almost comical as he distributes letters and parcels, small lifelines from a world that feels like a distant planet. You receive 2 letters, one from your mother, another from Sarah back in Ohio. You tuck them inside your jacket to read later in private, where no one will see if they make you cry. Fresh socks arrive too, a gift more precious than gold. You massage life back into your feet, wincing at the whitened skin, but relieved to see no sign of frostbite. Jenkins, no longer just the kid, though still boyish, offers a grin as he pulls on his own dry pair. Christmas came late, he says, and for a moment you almost smile. The afternoon drifts in a haze of routine cleaning weapons, rotating watch shifts, scanning the snowy village for the smallest flicker of movement. The landscape is deceptively serene, a winter postcard marred only by the knowledge that somewhere beyond those quiet rooftops, men are preparing to kill you. A patrol is ordered to probe the northern tree line, 6 men led by Staff Sergeant Barlow. You're among them. The snow muffles every sound as you advance in cautious, single-file eyes, straining for tracks, broken branches, the telltale glint of metal. The forest plays tricks on your senses. Every shadow suggests a rifle barrel, every rustle a hidden sniper. 3 tense hours later, you return to the line empty-handed, but with legs aching from the slow, deliberate march. As twilight bleeds across the sky, a sudden whistle slices the air, followed by the shriek of incoming artillery. Instinct takes over. You dive into your foxhole, Jenkins landing a heartbeat later as the world erupts. The German barrage lasts 20 endless minutes, earth-shaking concussions, splintering trees, and showering you with dirt and ice. You press yourself into the frozen ground, praying the next shell doesn't have your name etched on its casing. When the bombardment finally ceases, silence feels almost alien. Your ears ring. Snow drifts down in a fine dust. Someone cries out for a medic. You crawl from the hole, heart hammering, and follow the sound. Staff Sergeant Barlow lies on the ground, a jagged shard of shrapnel buried deep in his thigh. His face is gray eyes, glassy with shock, but he grips your arm with surprising strength. "Keep an eye on the new kid," he rasps, nodding toward Jenkins. "Greener than grass." The medic works fast, cutting away fabric, applying a tourniquet as blood seeps black into the snow. "This needs surgery," he says firmly. 2 stretcher bearers arrive, lifting Barlow with practiced care. The sergeant squeezes your arm once more before they carry him into the dark. You know, with the quiet certainty soldiers learn too well, that you'll probably never see him again. Night falls hard and cold. The air grows razor sharp, every breath a sting. Orders pass along the line, double the watch. You and Jenkins draw the midnight to 4 shift. He slides into the foxhole beside you, eyes wide but steady. For a long time, the 2 of you sit in silence, rifles across your knees, listening to the forest breathe. The moon hangs bright and indifferent above the shattered trees. Somewhere far off, artillery thumps like a giant's heartbeat. After an hour, Jenkins whispers, "How do you stand it, the waiting, knowing they could be out there watching us right now?" You think of Murphy standing alone on that burning tank destroyer of Barlow's blood, dark against the snow. You don't think too far ahead, you answer quietly, just the next minute, the next breath. He nods, eyes fixed on the black edge of the forest. "I'm scared all the time," he admits. "Everyone is, you say. Only liars and dead men say otherwise." The conversation fades, replaced by the creak of ice-laden branches and the hiss of your own breath. You share a cigarette, its tiny ember of fragile defiance against the darkness. Time stretches, the stars wheel slowly overhead, and the cold gnaws without mercy. Somewhere beyond the silent trees, the enemy is gathering. Here you and Jenkins wait, 2 figures in a frozen world, holding a fragile line between survival and the nothingness beyond. Gray morning seeps into the forest like a ghost, dim and heavy. You wake to the sound of distant artillery, low rhythmic thumps that have become as familiar as a heartbeat. Every joint in your body protests as you stretch muscles stiff from hours in the foxhole. Frost rims your rifle barrel and helmet. Your breath fogs the air in pale clouds briefly visible before the cold swallows it. Around you, Company B stirs to life. Men move with slow, deliberate motions, rubbing hands together, checking weapons, shaking fresh snow from their blankets. The smell of damp wool and cold metal mixes with the sharp scent of pine. A medic hunches over a wounded soldier's leg, retying a bandage in silence. Beyond the tree line, the snow-covered fields lie deceptively still, the village of Holtzwihr crouched in the distance like a sleeping beast. Breakfast is another K-ration, a tin of powdered eggs, biscuits hard as stone, a chunk of chocolate frozen to the consistency of granite. You chew because you must not because you taste anything. The calories are the only defense against the cold that gnaws at bone and spirit alike. Lieutenant Murphy appears, his small frame bundled in a greatcoat, a thin strip of gauze visible beneath his trousers, where shrapnel grazed him yesterday. His eyes, though rimmed with fatigue, remain clear and sharp. Scouts report the Germans are quiet, he says evenly, but quiet doesn't mean safe. Stay sharp. His voice carries just enough to reach each foxhole, the words steadying the men like a hand on the shoulder. By mid-morning, a jeep rattles into the perimeter, bringing more mail and a few precious supplies. You get another letter from home. It's familiar handwriting, a sudden warmth in the frozen forest. Jenkins, crouched beside you, unfolds a note from his younger sisters and smiles faintly before tucking it inside his jacket. These thin scraps of paper are lifelines, proof that another world exists beyond the endless white. The day drags in a rhythm of waiting. You clean your M1 Garand, yet again oiling the bolt and checking each clip as if ritual alone can guarantee survival. Hours stretch, punctuated only by the distant cough of artillery and the occasional crack of a falling branch. Late in the afternoon, orders come for a reconnaissance patrol. 6 men, including you, move north under Staff Sergeant Barlow. The forest is a maze of shadows and muffled sound. Every creak of ice, every gust of wind sets your nerves on edge. Snow deadens your footfalls but amplifies your heartbeat until it seems loud enough to give you away. 3 hours later, you return cold and empty-handed, the only enemy encountered, the gnawing exhaustion that creeps deeper with each mile. Dusk settles like a curtain. A pale sun bleeds into a horizon of slate clouds. You hunch lower in your foxhole, rubbing numb fingers together. That's when the whistle comes, a high slicing note that precedes the scream of incoming artillery. Instinct drives you flat against the frozen earth as the first shells hit. The ground convulses, trees splinter, snow and dirt erupt in vicious geysers. The barrage is systematic and merciless, walking across the American line with cruel precision. You curl tighter, heart-pounding ears ringing with the concussive roar. For 20 endless minutes, the world is nothing but noise and fire. You taste earth and smoke. Shards of ice sting your cheeks. Somewhere a man screams, abruptly cut off. You press yourself deeper, trying to merge with the frozen ground. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence falls, a stunned, eerie quiet broken only by the hiss of settling snow and the distant crackle of fires. You lift your head cautiously. The once tall pines are now ragged stumps. The air reeks of cordite and burning wood. Around you, men stir like survivors of a shipwreck, blinking through the smoke. Medica voice shouts nearby. You scramble toward it, boots slipping on churned snow. Staff Sergeant Barlow lies twisted in a shallow crater, a jagged shard of metal embedded in his thigh. Blood spreads dark and slow across the whiteness. His face is ashen, but when you kneel beside him, he grips your arm with surprising strength. "Keep an eye on the kid," he rasps, eyes flicking toward Jenkins, who crouches wide-eyed a few feet away. Greener than spring grass. The medic arrives, sliding to his knees, and works quickly, cutting fabric, tightening a tourniquet, while murmuring calm words that seem more for you than for the patient. Barlow's jaw tightens, refusing a groan even as the medic packs the wound. 2 stretcher bearers appear and lift him carefully. Barlow catches your sleeve before they carry him off. "Don't let him do anything stupid," he whispers, nodding again at Jenkins. You clasp his cold hand briefly. "I've got him, Sarge." He releases his grip and is gone into the smoky darkness, the stretcher bearer's boots crunching through fresh snow. The sky deepens to indigo. Stars begin to pierce the winter haze, cold and sharp. Orders pass quietly, double the watch, 2 men per post, 4-hour shifts. You and Jenkins draw the midnight slot again. He slides into the foxhole beside you, his young face pale but resolute. The forest around you is a cathedral of black silhouettes and glittering frost. Every sound stands out, the creak of a frozen branch, the soft hiss of your own breath, the distant, relentless rumble of artillery somewhere far to the east. After an hour, Jenkins whispers, "How do you keep from thinking about everything?" His voice is barely audible over the sigh of wind. "One breath at a time," you answer. "One heartbeat. Don't look too far ahead." "I'm scared," he says after a pause. "Everyone is," you reply. "Only fools or liars say they aren't." He nods, shoulders relaxing a fraction. You share a cigarette, shielding the tiny glow with cupped hands. The smoke burns your throat, but warms your chest, a brief defiance against the cold and the dark. Time stretches. The moon climbs, painting the snow with silver light. Once a deer emerges from the trees, delicate and unhurried. For a moment, you and the animal regard each other, 2 creatures sharing the same fragile night, before it bounds away into the shadows. The hours pass in watchful silence, broken only by the soft click of rifles being checked and the slow drift of snow. Somewhere out there beyond the pale horizon, the enemy gathers again. Here in the foxhole, you and Jenkins wait, breathing, listening, holding the thin line between survival and the dark unknown. A thin gray light creeps across the snow as morning breaks, less a sunrise than a slow lifting of shadow. Your body feels as though it has aged decades. Overnight stiff joints, cramped muscles, skin chafed raw by cold. You stretch carefully, every movement a protest. Jenkins blinks awake beside you, his face ghost pale in the early light, but his eyes are alert. Neither of you speaks at first. Words feel out of place in this brittle silence. The forest is eerily calm. Even the distant artillery that usually murmurs like a background heartbeat is absent. Only the occasional crack of ice-laden branches punctuates the quiet. You chew another K-ration breakfast biscuits and a smear of processed meat, forcing yourself to swallow despite the tasteless grit. Calories are more important than comfort. Lieutenant Murphy moves along the line, checking positions, his small frame a steady presence. The bandage beneath his trouser leg is hidden under a new layer of mud, but he walks without a limp. "They'll regroup," he says, to each squad voice low and firm, eyes open. He stops at your foxhole just long enough to study the distant tree line through his field glasses. They're patient. Don't give them an opening. A quick nod and he's gone. As the sun lifts, the air sharpens. Frost sparkles on the branches, deceptively beautiful. Around midday, a supply jeep skids in on chains, bringing mail ammunition and the rarest treasure, dry socks. The men react with quiet gratitude, some even smiling as they change footwear and massage, feeling back into their feet. You do the same, savoring the small mercy. The afternoon drags in a haze of restless waiting. You clean your rifle twice, not because it needs it, but because the ritual steadies you. Jenkins sits nearby, writing a letter home with gloved hands. "What do you even say?" he asks. "I tell them I'm fine, the food's decent, I'm making friends." Lies mostly. Better than making them worry. You nod, understanding. Your own letters carry the same soft deceptions. Near dusk, the horizon darkens with heavy clouds. Snow begins to fall, wet, heavy flakes that thicken the air and deaden sound. Visibility shrinks to a pale blur. You don't like it. Heavy snow is perfect cover for an attack. As if conjured by your unease, the first distant thud rolls across the forest. Artillery, German. The whistle of incoming shells follows sharp and unmistakable. Incoming, someone shouts and the world erupts. Mortar rounds rain down, walking the barrage across your position with terrifying precision. The ground shudders, trees splinter, snow and dirt churn into choking clouds. You and Jenkins press flat helmets, rattling from concussions. A shell lands close enough to shower your foxhole with ice and bark. The air reeks of cordite and burning pine. Through the haze, you glimpse movement, dark shapes emerging from the tree line, ghost-like against the swirling snow. Here they come. A voice bellows. You shoulder your M1, heart hammering. The first German soldiers advance in white winter smocks, blending with the storm until they are nearly invisible. You fire the rifle's recoil sharp against your shoulder. Jenkins fires beside you, his shot steadier than before. The crisp ping of an empty clip rings out. You reload automatically, fingers stiff but practiced. The firefight becomes a brutal rhythm aim squeeze reload. Machine guns chatter from neighboring foxholes, their staccato bursts shredding the snowy silence. German mortars answer explosions, sending geysers of snow skyward. The enemy keeps coming, disciplined and relentless, advancing in short rushes despite mounting casualties. A mortar shell lands close enough to rattle your teeth. The shockwave leaves your ears ringing, vision swimming. Jenkins grabs your sleeve, eyes wide, but you give a thumbs up, no wounds. You both shift position, ducking lower behind the stone lip of the foxhole as bullets chew at the wall. Through a gap in the falling snow, you spot a German officer gesturing his troops forward. You draw a slow breath, steady your sights and fire. The officer pitches backward, his men hesitating just long enough for American machine guns to cut them down. The battle rages for over an hour. The Germans press to within yards of your line, only to be beaten back by a storm of rifle fire and well-placed artillery called in by Murphy, whose calm voice crackles over the field telephone, even as shells burst around him. His ability to stay composed under fire is almost superhuman, and it holds the company together. Gradually, the assault falters. White-clad figures retreat toward the tree line, some dragging wounded comrades, others simply vanishing into the storm. Sporadic gunfire continues, then fades to an eerie hush. The field beyond the village is littered with dark shapes half buried in snow. You exhale a shaky breath, realizing only now how hard your heart is pounding. Your hands tremble as you eject an empty clip and check your ammo, 2 full bandoliers left. Beside you, Jenkins leans back against the wall of the foxhole, face streaked with sweat and soot, but his eyes are bright with the sharp relief of survival. Lieutenant Murphy appears moving along the line with his usual quiet efficiency. His coat is torn, a smear of blood across one sleeve, whether his or someone else's, you can't tell. "Good work," he says evenly. "They won't be back tonight. Resupplies on the way." He pauses, glancing at Jenkins. "You good, Private?" "Yes, sir," Jenkins answers, voice steadier than you expected. Murphy nods once, a flicker of approval in his tired eyes, and moves on to the next position. The snow tapers off, leaving a broken landscape of churned white and blackened craters. Medics move among the wounded, their quiet calls for bandages and morphine mixing with the occasional groan of pain. You help Jenkins rewrap a shallow shrapnel cut on his arm, the two of you working by the pale light of a fading moon. As night deepens, the cold returns with sharpened teeth. You huddle beneath your blanket rifle across your knees, the adrenaline slowly draining from your veins. Exhaustion presses in, but sleep is a luxury you can't trust. Beyond the village, the enemy is still out there regrouping, waiting for the next chance. For now, though, the line holds. You are alive, and in this frozen corner of France, that is victory enough. Morning limps into being under a sky the color of tarnished steel. After the long, brutal night, the pale daylight feels almost unreal, too fragile to illuminate the wreckage scattered across the fields. You stretch stiffly, muscles aching as if carved from ice. Jenkins rouses beside you with a groan, brushing frost from his coat. Neither of you speaks for a moment. Silence seems the only fitting response to what the dark has left behind. The air smells of gunpowder and smoke, a bitter tang that clings to your throat. Snow drifts lazily through the broken trees, softening the outlines of shell craters and fallen men. Where the Germans pressed hardest, the white ground is pocked with dark stains that the new snow cannot yet erase. A supply team arrives, their breath steaming in the cold as they haul crates of ammunition and a few blessed thermoses of coffee. You cradle a cup in gloved hands, savoring the scalding liquid as warmth creeps through your chest. Beside you, Jenkins sips cautiously, his eyes still shadowed but alert. "Thought we were finished last night," he says quietly. You nod. No need to answer. The truth is already etched in both your faces. Lieutenant Murphy makes his rounds, offering a word here, a steadying glance there. His uniform is tattered and smoke-stained, yet he moves with the same calm authority you have come to expect. "Resupplies here," he tells each squad. "Eat gear up. We move when the trucks arrive." The order carries weight beyond logistics. It means you've held. It means you advance. Yes. By late morning, the column forms along a snow-choked track leading northeast. The objective: drive the retreating Germans toward the Rhine and keep them from digging in. You shoulder your pack heavier now with fresh ammunition and fall into line behind Murphy. The sun peeks through thin clouds, casting a cold glitter over the desolate landscape as you march. Each step through the knee-deep snow is an act of will. Boots crunch, rifles clink against gear, breath comes in frosty plumes. The monotony becomes hypnotic, lift plant, until your world narrows to the rhythm of movement and the weight of your rifle across your shoulders. You lose all sense of time except for the slow arc of the sun. By midday, you reach a lonely crossroads where a stone farmhouse squats in the white fields. Scouts report it abandoned, but Murphy is cautious. He sends a squad forward to clear it while the rest of the company takes cover in shallow ditches along the road. The stillness is unnerving. Too still. You feel it before you see it, the wrongness in the air. A sudden flicker of movement at the windows. Then the crack of gunfire shatters the silence. The farmhouse erupts with muzzle flashes. The first men are caught in the open, two dropping instantly, the snow blooming crimson around them. Contact front. The shout echoes even as you dive for cover. Machine gun fire rakes the road sharp and relentless. You press into the icy ditch heart, hammering. Murphy is already shouting orders, his voice cutting through the chaos, suppressing fire on that house bazooka team up front. A light machine gun team scrambles into position, their bar chattering a staccato reply. The medic crawls forward under fire, dragging a wounded soldier back by his collar. Bullets kick up fountains of snow inches from his boots, but he doesn't falter. The bazooka team moves with grim precision. The first rocket whooshes toward the farmhouse, slamming into the stone wall with a thunderous crack. A second follows, blowing a gaping hole near the door. The gunfire falters. A moment of eerie silence hangs, then a scrap of white cloth appears in a shattered window surrender. 4 German soldiers emerge, gaunt and hollow-eyed, hands raised. Their uniforms are patched and thin, their faces drawn with exhaustion and hunger. One speaks halting English. "War is over for us." He will not meet your gaze. You feel no triumph, only a weary recognition they are soldiers like you, caught in a machine that chews men to nothing. Once the prisoners are secured, Murphy signals the advance. You skirt the smoldering farmhouse, stepping past the bodies of the fallen Americans. Snowflakes settle on their still faces, an indifferent shroud. You murmur a silent promise to remember their names. The march continues through an afternoon of bitter wind and deepening fatigue. The land changes, rolling hills and thicker woods that hide unknown threats. Every shadow seems alive. Every gust of wind carries the imagined snap of a rifle shot. Still, the company pushes forward mile after grinding mile. Late in the day, as gray dust gathers, you spot a shape in the snow, a single boot protruding from a drift. You kneel, brushing away the powder to reveal the frozen body of an American soldier. His eyes stare unseeing at the darkening sky rifle still clutched in stiff fingers. 3rd Battalion passed here yesterday, Murphy says, coming up behind you. Hard fighting. You check the dog tags. James Mitchell, Tennessee. Someone you never knew yet, bound to you by uniform and purpose. You pull a scarf from your pack to cover his face, a small act of respect in a war that seldom allows for dignity. Jenkins watches silently, eyes solemn. We mark it for graves of registration, Murphy says quietly. Keep moving. The order feels cruel, but you obey. War gives no time for mourning. By nightfall, you've covered roughly 6 miles, less than planned, but hard won in the deep snow. The company halts in a small copse of trees, offering scant shelter from the wind. No fires are permitted. Darkness and stealth are your only defenses. You and Jenkins scrape out a shallow foxhole, lining it with pine boughs for what little insulation they provide. The cold is merciless, sharper than any blade. Breath crystallizes on your scarf. Water in your canteen turns solid within an hour. You and Jenkins sit shoulder to shoulder beneath a shared blanket, the only warmth your combined body heat. Feels colder than last night, he mutters through chattering teeth. Too cold to measure, you reply, pulling the blanket tighter. Keep moving your toes. Don't let them freeze. Sleep comes in ragged snatches, interrupted by the need to stamp feet and rub hands to keep blood flowing. Sometime after midnight, heavy snow begins to fall, thick, wet flakes that blanket the forest in minutes. The sudden insulation muffles sound, creating an eerie, dreamlike hush. But you know the truth. This is perfect weather for a German counterattack. Your instinct proves right just before dawn. The first warning is the muffled thunk of mortars, then the whistle of descending shells. Incoming, someone shouts. Explosions tear through the camp, the ground heaving beneath you. You and Jenkins flatten yourselves into the foxhole as snow and dirt rain down the air, alive with the shriek of steel. Through the swirling white dark figures appear German infantry in snow camouflage, ghostly and swift. They move with lethal precision, advancing through the barrage. The second assault has begun. The forest erupts in chaos. Mortar shells detonate with bone-rattling force, flinging snow and splinters through the air like shrapnel knives. The night sky flickers with muzzle flashes, each burst of light revealing white-clad German soldiers slipping through the blizzard like phantoms. You yank Jenkins down as a shell explodes nearby, the concussion slamming into your chest like a giant's fist. Your ears ring, your breath comes fast and ragged. But there's no time to think. You slam a fresh clip into the M1 Garand, the metallic ping lost beneath the roar of battle. They're coming straight through. Someone shouts from the next foxhole. Tracers streak red across the snow, carving bright wounds in the darkness. German voices bark commands muffled by the storm but unmistakable. Jenkins fires beside you, each shot jerky but true. His earlier hesitation is gone. He works the rifle's action with the efficiency of a man who has accepted the terrible rhythm of combat. You match him shot for shot, the Garand bucking against your shoulder as white figures stumble and fall under your fire. A stick grenade lands 10 feet away with a hollow thunk. Grenade, you shout, and both of you dive flat as it erupts, showering the foxhole with shards of ice and metal. A hot sting slices your cheek. You wipe blood away with a glove already stiff from the cold. The German push intensifies. Through the swirling snow, you glimpse a squad flanking left, hoping to break the line. Left side, Jenkins cover you bark. He swings the rifle, squeezing off careful shots. 2 enemy soldiers collapse in the snow. The rest scatter, their attack blunted. Farther along the perimeter, Lieutenant Murphy's voice carries through the cacophony, calm and unyielding. Hold your positions. Interlocking fire now. Even in this chaos, he sounds almost composed, issuing precise orders as if conducting a grim orchestra. American machine guns answer their steady chatter, laying down a deadly curtain. The German advance falters under the crossfire. Yet the enemy keeps coming, ghostly silhouettes weaving through the storm. A mortar round slams into a nearby tree, splitting it in half with a deafening crack. The trunk crashes across the line, showering your position with needles and frozen bark. Your rifle grows hot despite the bitter air. You swap clips with practice speed heart hammering. Jenkins grits his teeth and keeps firing, steam rising from his damp scarf. His face is a mask of concentration, boyish fear hardened into grim resolve. Then, as abruptly as it began, the assault ebbs. The white-clad figures withdraw, dragging their wounded into the blizzard. Sporadic gunfire pops like distant fireworks, then silence descends, broken only by the groans of the injured and the hiss of falling snow. You exhale shakily, arms trembling from adrenaline and cold. The air reeks of cordite and burned pine. Around you, the ground is churned black and red, where bodies, friend and foe, lie still beneath a thin white shroud. Lieutenant Murphy appears, moving swiftly from foxhole to foxhole. His coat is torn, a streak of blood across one cheek, but his eyes are clear. "Good work," he says, crouching beside you. "They're pulling back toward Yebshimi. Resupply will reach us within the hour." "Yes, sir," you reply, wiping ice and sweat from your brow. Jenkins only nods, his breath coming in sharp clouds. Murphy claps his shoulder. "Steady shooting, Private," he says, and moves on. The words, simple and calm, light a quiet pride in Jenkins that you can see even in the pale dawn. As the sky brightens, the scale of the battle reveals itself. Shattered trees claw at the pale horizon. Dark forms fallen. German soldiers dot the snowy field, their outlines slowly softening under fresh flakes. Medics work methodically among the wounded, their quiet calls for stretchers mingling with the moans of men too hurt to rise. You help Jenkins bandage a shallow shrapnel cut on his forearm. He winces but doesn't complain. Your own cheek still bleeds sluggishly, a thin warmth against the cold, but it's minor, nothing worth a medic's time. The supply squad finally arrives, carrying ammunition, grenades, and a thermos of coffee so hot its steam curls invitingly in the frigid air. You and Jenkins each take a turn with the precious drink, the heat spreading through your chest like a small miracle. By mid-morning, the snow eases the gray sky, lifting enough to reveal a battered landscape of cratered ground and broken timber. Orders come down. Company B is to advance again, pressing northeast toward the Rhine. The enemy is falling back, but higher command wants no pause that might let them regroup. You shoulder your pack, feeling the familiar ache of exhaustion settle deeper into your bones. Jenkins reloads his rifle with steady hands. He catches your eye and offers a tight, determined smile. One foot in front of the other, he says, echoing Murphy's mantra. The column forms and it begins to move, boots crunching over the frozen earth. The village of Yebshimi lies ahead, its church steeple a dark silhouette against the dull winter sky. Smoke rises faintly from its rooftops, a signal of the fight still to come. The march is a test of endurance. Snow drifts knee-high in places, and each step requires effort. Your world narrows to breath and motion, inhale, exhale, lift, plant. The cold seeps into every joint, but you push on, mile after grinding mile, until the outline of the next village sharpens through the haze. By late afternoon, you reach a wooded ridge overlooking Yebshimi. Distant artillery booms punctuating the quiet like a giant's heartbeat. Below, you can see flashes of gunfire and the faint movement of troops. 3rd Battalion is already engaged. Company B halts in the shelter of trees half a mile from the village. Men drop to their knees, grateful for even a brief rest. Jenkins leans against a snow-laden trunk, eyes half closed but alert. Almost there, he murmurs. You nod, scanning the village through the fading light. Another fight awaits street by street, house by house. But for the moment, there is only this pause, the steady rhythm of breath, and the weight of the rifle across your knees. Dusk settles over the frozen landscape as Company B crouches in the shelter of the trees. Ahead, the village of Yebshimi lies half-veiled in drifting smoke, its stone buildings silhouetted against a darkening sky. Muffled artillery rumbles in the distance like an approaching storm. 3rd Battalion is already locked in combat there. You can hear the occasional burst of machine gun fire riding the wind. Lieutenant Murphy gathers the squad leaders around a Jeep hood slick with frost. You and Jenkins listen from a few steps back as orders filter down at 1800 hours. Your company will push from the southwest to support 3rd Battalion's assault. The goal: clear the village and force the retreating Germans closer to the Rhine. The words are spare, almost casual, but you feel their weight settle into your gut. You use the brief pause to tend to small essentials. Fresh socks, miraculously dry, go on first, each layer, a defense against the creeping cold. You massage feeling back into your feet, wincing at the tenderness of blisters that never quite heal. Jenkins follows your example, grimacing as he tapes raw spots on his heels. Next comes the ritual of the rifle field strip wipe, every part oil, the bolt reassemble. In this war, a clean weapon is as vital as a beating heart. The light is fading fast when Murphy moves among the men, a quiet anchor of authority. Stay alert, keep intervals, watch the windows, he says, his voice carrying a calm that steadies everyone it touches. He pauses at your position. Urban fighting is chaos, one foot in front of the other. That's how we win. You nod the words, a small talisman against the fear twisting in your chest. At exactly 1800, American artillery begins its preparatory barrage. The ground trembles under the pounding of 105mm shells. Distant roofs collapse in thunderous echoes. Sparks and dust rise in jagged columns above the village. When the guns fall silent, the only sound is the hiss of settling snow. Advance. The order cuts through the cold. You move out in staggered formation across the open ground, every nerve screaming. The snow is knee-deep and treacherous, each step a heavy lift. Halfway to the first houses, German machine guns erupt their tracers, slicing red lines through the twilight. Men drop to the snow as bullets kick up icy fountains. You and Jenkins dive into a shallow drainage ditch, pressing into the frozen mud. Crawl forward, you shout over the din. Elbows and knees bite into the hard ground as you inch ahead, rifles held clear of the snow. Around you, other squads do the same, advancing in a grim inch-by-inch rhythm. Overhead, Allied machine guns return fire, their harsh chatter mixing with the whistle of incoming German rounds. By the time you reach the first buildings, full darkness has fallen. The village looms like a black maze of jagged silhouettes and shattered walls. Street fighting, the most dangerous kind, begins immediately. Murphy divides the men into 4-man clearing teams. You and Jenkins are assigned to the second wave. The first house reeks of smoke and cold ashes. You move room to room, rifle steady, senses sharpened to a knife edge. Every doorway could hide a sniper. Every shadow could mask a grenade. Upstairs, an elderly couple huddles together, eyes wide with terror. You lower your weapon, speaking a few halting words of German, "Bleiben Sie hier," safe. They nod frantically. You move on. Outside, the night explodes with sudden violence, grenades, short bursts of automatic fire, the metallic ring of ricochets. Flare light turns the snow an unearthly white, throwing long, menacing shadows across the narrow streets. Each house cleared is a small victory, but there is no pause. Another door, another room, another heartbeat between life and death. Hours grind by. Some buildings are deserted, others shelter terrified civilians, and a few hide German soldiers who fight with desperate ferocity. You learn to move without thought, kick in the door, sweep, left, sweep, right, call, clear, move on. Jenkins stays close. His face set, his motions precise, a far cry from the hesitant recruit of a week ago. Near midnight, you regroup in a half-collapsed bakery. The air smells faintly of bread, long since gone stale. Jenkins leans against a cracked wall, sweat freezing on his brow. How much longer, he asks. You glance at your watch past 0100. Until the church, you answer. That's their stronghold. He nods without complaint, wipes his rifle, and rises when the next order comes. Step by step, block by block, you push deeper into Yebshime. The streets are littered with rubble and glass. Every intersection is a potential ambush. But the line holds the Americans advancing with relentless, grinding determination. At last, in the cold hours before dawn, you glimpse the stone church at the heart of the village, its damaged steeple jagged against the star-scattered sky. From within comes the hard crack of rifles and the metallic rattle of machine guns, the final German redoubt. Lieutenant Murphy signals a halt, scanning the dark square ahead. His breath frosts in the air as he speaks quietly into the field telephone, calling for fresh artillery coordinates. You crouch behind a toppled wall, heart pounding, waiting for the next move. Around you, men reload in silence, eyes fixed on the shadowed church. The night is deathly still except for the occasional pop of a distant flare. The assault on the church will come with the next order. Another house-to-house fight. Another test of endurance, courage, and sheer will. You tighten your grip on the rifle, the cold steel biting through your gloves, and glance at Jenkins. He meets your eyes, gives a short, determined nod. Whatever waits inside those stone walls, you will face it together. The church square lies ahead, a dark expanse spiked with rubble and half-collapsed walls. Lieutenant Murphy studies it through binoculars, the faint glow of a flare glinting off the lenses. German machine guns chatter intermittently from sandbag positions around the church. Their muzzle flashes brief bursts of orange against the black stone. Snipers lurk high in the shattered bell tower. Crossing that open space would be suicide unless the defenders can be flanked. Murphy's voice is calm but decisive as he calls you over. Richards, take your squad through those connected shops on the right. Find a side angle on their emplacements. We'll coordinate an artillery barrage before you open fire. You nod, signaling to Jenkins and the rest of the team. 8 men each, face set in the hard mask of soldiers who know the odds and move anyway. The rear alleys are narrow and choked with debris. You advance in silence, hand signals guiding the squad. Every doorway is a question mark. Twice you halt, listening for footsteps beyond a half-open door, then move on when only silence answers. A grocer's shop leads into a seamstress's parlor, bolts of cloth scattered like fallen flags. Upstairs, a cracked window offers the view you need, the Germans' flank partially exposed, their weapons pointed toward the main street where Murphy will attack. You set up the Browning automatic rifle in that window. Private Wilson settles behind it, jaw clenched, eyes steady. Jenkins crouches beside you, breathing slow and deliberate despite the cold. Over the field phone, you whisper, "In position, sir. Clear fire on their right, ready when you are." "Good work," Murphy replies, voice low but firm. "Artillery in 5. Stand by." The wait stretches, each second elongated by tension. Below, the Germans move with wary discipline, oblivious to the danger gathering at their flank. You count the men, perhaps 20 outside, likely more inside the church. Their faces are gaunt, uniforms frayed, but their weapons remain lethal. Then the American artillery begins. 105mm shells crash around the square, not on the church itself, but close enough to drive the defenders to ground. "Fire," you shout. Wilson squeezes the trigger, the bar hammering a deadly rhythm. Your rifle joins in bullets tearing into the sandbagged positions from an unexpected angle. Jenkins fires steadily beside you, each shot deliberate. The effect is immediate. Germans scramble for cover, confusion rippling through their ranks. At the same moment, Murphy leads the main element of Company B in a frontal assault. Tracers streak across the square, grenades arc in glowing parabolas. The defenders caught in a crossfire begin to break. Bullets smash the window frame around you, shards of glass cutting your cheek. You duck, shift, and fire again. Jenkins remains rock steady, reloading with the speed born of grim necessity. Minutes blur into a frantic eternity of recoil smoke and shouted commands. At last, the German return fire falters, then ceases altogether. Those who survive either flee north into the darkness or throw down their weapons. The square is American, but the church itself remains. Murphy gathers a final assault team, you, Jenkins, and 3 others. Fast and thorough, he instructs. Watch for booby traps. You nod, heart hammering. The church door hangs splintered from the artillery barrage. 2 grenades go in first, their concussions echoing through the stone nave. Move, you command, rushing inside behind the blast. The interior is a desecrated sanctuary. Pews overturned into barricades, religious statues riddled with bullet holes, the altar stacked with ammunition crates. 3 German soldiers lie still amid the debris, their lifeless eyes reflecting the flicker of your flashlight. No others remain. You climb the narrow spiral to the bell tower. The steps creak under your boots, every turn a potential death trap. But the top is deserted, save for shattered glass and the bitter smell of cordite. From this high vantage, the battlefield stretches away under a cold moon. To the north, you see the last German units retreating toward the Rhine, tiny figures against the endless snow. Back on the ground, you report to Murphy. Church clear. Good observation point upstairs. He nods, exhaustion etched deep into his boyish face. Excellent. Get your men some rest. We hold here tonight. The hours after battle are strangely quiet. Ammunition is redistributed. Medics tend the wounded. The dead, both friend and enemy, are laid out under white sheets of snow. You and Jenkins find a corner in a partially intact house near the square. A small fire, carefully shielded from outside view, offers a fragile warmth. Jenkins sits cross-legged, rifle across his lap, eyes reflecting the flame. He looks older than when you met. The last traces of boyhood burned away. Think we'll make it to the Rhine? He asks. Some of us, will you say after a moment? That's all anyone can promise. He nods, silent, absorbing the truth. Outside, the night deepens cold and star-bright. Inside, you allow yourself the smallest exhale of relief. For now, just now, the village is yours and you are alive. The night in Yebsheimi passes under a canopy of hard stars and a brittle, echoing silence. After the fury of the assault, the stillness feels almost unnatural, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You and Jenkins share a small fire in the corner of a battered house near the church square. The roof is ragged from artillery, but the walls hold in just enough warmth to keep frost from your eyelashes. Jenkins methodically cleans his rifle, the metal gleaming dully in the flickering light. His movements are practiced now, almost ritualistic. This once green recruit hardened into a soldier by days of relentless combat. If I make it home, he says quietly, I'll finish school. Maybe teach history. Tell kids about all this so they know what it cost. His eyes remain fixed on the weapon as he speaks. That's good, you answer. Someone has to remember. The words feel heavier than they sound. Beyond the broken window, the village is a mosaic of shadows and dim fires where other squads huddle. Occasional cracks of distant rifle shots remind you that the enemy is still out there regrouping. You lie back against the cold wall, your helmet beside you, rifle across your knees. Despite the lingering adrenaline, exhaustion seeps through your muscles, dragging you toward uneasy sleep. Before dawn, Murphy moves silently through the square, checking on each squad. His face is drawn, but his presence remains a quiet anchor. Hold positions until first light, he tells the few still awake. Then we move. His voice carries the same calm certainty that has become the company's lifeline. When morning comes, the sky is a pale wash of blue and gray. Fresh snow muffles every sound. You wake to the distant rumble of American trucks approaching from the west. Reinforcements at last. Fresh troops climb down their uniforms, cleaner, their eyes not yet shadowed by combat. They look around at the shattered village with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, as if stepping into another world. Orders arrive swiftly. Push east toward the Rhine. The Germans are falling back, and higher command wants the pressure relentless. You share a ration of tepid coffee with Jenkins, the bitter heat, a small mercy. Around you, men ready their gear with silent efficiency, tightening helmet straps, adjusting packs, checking weapons. The war is far from over. It merely shifts to the next field, the next village. The march resumes under a bright, pitiless winter sun. The ground is churned and uneven, scarred by shell fire and tracked by countless boots and treads. Hours blur into the rhythm of movement, lift, plant, breathe, repeat. Cold gnaws at fingers and toes, but the column presses forward one weary step after another. By mid-afternoon, you pause on a low ridge. From here, the land slopes toward the silver ribbon of the Rhine, glinting faintly in the distance. Beyond that lies Germany itself, still defiant, but undeniably on the defensive now. You take in the view with a quiet sense of inevitability. The war is turning. The enemy is retreating, not from foreign soil, but toward their own heartland. As the column halts to reorganize, you glance at Jenkins. His face is leaner, eyes sharper, yet there's a flicker of something almost hopeful there. Closer every day, he says, breath clouding in the cold air. You nod, one foot in front of the other. The phrase has become more than an order. It is a creed, a promise to keep moving no matter the cost. And so you march again, rifle steady, heart heavy but unbroken, carrying with you the memory of frozen nights, desperate battles, and the quiet, stubborn determination that will see you through to whatever end awaits. The Rhine's distant shimmer stays with you as the column moves east, a silent goal glinting under the pale winter sun. Snow crunches beneath hundreds of boots, the sound oddly steady, almost meditative. Around you, the men of Company B are quiet. Their faces a blend of exhaustion and grim resolve. After Yebsheim, after the church square and its deadly crossfire, everyone understands that each new mile brings another test, another ambush, another farmhouse that might hide a machine gun. The countryside bears fresh scars of retreat. Farmsteads stand abandoned doors, hanging askew livestock long gone or wandering wild. Smoke rises from blackened chimneys where shell fire has torn through roofs. Every field, every clump of trees could conceal a sniper. The scouts range far ahead, eyes never still. You keep your rifle at the ready, finger brushing the trigger guard, listening for the unnatural crack of a shot that will mean someone else won't make it home. By late afternoon, a thin overcast dims the sun to a weak silver disk. The column halts at a crossroads where a stone farmhouse squats behind low hedgerows. Intelligence suggests German rearguards may be in the area. Murphy, as ever at the front, raises a hand for silence and signals a brief halt. The men kneel in the snow breaths, puffing white. A faint creak of wood, a flash of movement in an upper window. Contact a scout hisses. The first burst of gunfire splits the cold air before the word is finished. Muzzle flashes spatter the farmhouse like lightning. Bullets slap into the road, kicking up vicious little geysers of snow. You dive to the ditch, Jenkins right beside you, the two of you hitting the frozen ground in a practiced motion. The Germans have laid an ambush perfectly sighted to rake the approach. Murphy wastes no time. Suppressing fire right side, he shouts, voice cutting through the gunfire like a bugle call. A bar team opens up heavy rounds, hammering the stone wall. You and Jenkins add your fire, aiming at the dark slits of windows, forcing the defenders to keep their heads down. Bazooka forward, Murphy signals. The two-man team crawls through the snow patient as hunters. A sharp hiss, then the whoosh of the rocket's backblast. The warhead slams into the farmhouse with a concussive roar, blowing a gaping wound in the wall. A second rocket follows, showering stone and smoke. Moments later, a scrap of white cloth flutters from a shattered window. 4 German soldiers stumble out, hands raised, their uniforms frayed, and faces hollow with hunger. They can't be much older than Jenkins. One manages, halting English Krieg ist fertig. War is finished for us. His eyes never quite meet yours. You feel a familiar, weary recognition. They were simply doing their job just as you are. Once the prisoners are secured and the wounded checked, Murphy signals the column forward. The farmhouse is left behind, its smoke blending into the low gray sky. You march on the cold, biting harder as daylight wanes. Evening drapes itself across the land as the company reaches a stand of pines chosen for the night's bivouac. No fire's enemy patrols could be near. You and Jenkins scrape out another foxhole, the earth frozen like iron beneath the spade. You huddle beneath a shared blanket, backs pressed together, trading warmth as the temperature plummets. The hours drag in a blur of half-sleep and sudden wakefulness. Snow begins again, heavy flakes that build a muffling layer over the forest. Sometime after midnight, the quiet shatters, first the distant thump of mortars, then the shriek of shells overhead. You and Jenkins flatten instinctively as explosions churn the night, showering the foxhole with dirt and ice. Through the swirling snow, ghostly shapes appear, German infantry in white camouflage, moving fast and silent behind their barrage. Incoming left, someone yells and the line erupts with rifle and machine gun fire. You brace your rifle, squeeze the trigger, feel the Garand's kick. Jenkins fires beside you, his face a mask of concentration and fear. The fight is savage and close. Shadows rush between trees. Muzzle flashes strobe the darkness. A stick grenade lands yards away with a sharp crack, pelting you with frozen earth. You reload by touch, hands numb but sure. German voices shout orders in the storm, answered by the relentless chatter of American Brownings. Murphy moves along the line like a figure from some old saga, shouting calm, precise commands. Interlock your fields. Hold this line. Even in chaos, his voice steadies you. For long, grinding minutes, the night is nothing but fire and snow, shouts, and the smell of cordite. At last, the attack falters. The white-clad figures fade back into the blizzard, leaving only scattered cries of the wounded and the hiss of settling snow. Silence returns, eerie and total. You and Jenkins exchange a long look, both breathing hard, both alive. He gives a short, incredulous laugh, half relief, half disbelief. Still here, he mutters. Still here, you echo the words, a quiet victory against the dark. Dawn bleeds slowly into the shattered woods, pale and thin after the night's chaos. The snow is crusted with a hard glaze, where explosions melted and refroze it, a battlefield of jagged ice and shadowed craters. You stir stiffly, every joint aching from hours of crouching and cold. Jenkins sits beside you, eyes ringed with exhaustion, rifle resting across his knees. A faint steam rises from his breath as he exhales, the only movement in the frozen hush. Medics move through the trees, checking for wounded and gathering the fallen. Their quiet efficiency contrasts with the violence of a few hours ago. Bodies, German and American alike, lie partly covered by fresh snow, their shapes softened but not hidden. You help where you can, lifting a stretcher here, carrying ammunition there. The work is grim but necessary. War doesn't pause for grief. By mid-morning, a supply convoy arrives, their trucks lumbering along rutted trails with precious cargo ammunition, food, and hot coffee. The rich scent cuts through the smell of cordite and pine. You cradle a steaming tin cup, savoring the brief warmth as it seeps into numb fingers. Jenkins tilts his head back, eyes closing as he drinks. Almost feels like home, he murmurs. For a heartbeat, the simple taste of coffee becomes a reminder of lives waiting beyond this frozen war. Orders come quickly. The enemy is in retreat, but the Rhine is still ahead, and the division must keep pressure on the withdrawing forces. Murphy gathers the men in the clearing. His uniform is frayed, his voice hoarse, but his presence is steady as ever. "We move east," he announces. "One village at a time. Keep your intervals, watch the tree lines." The Germans are falling back, but they'll fight for every mile. The march resumes under a cold sun veiled by thin clouds. Each step through deep snow is a labor of will, lift, plant, breathe. The land changes from dense forest to open fields scarred by tank tracks and frozen shell craters. Abandoned farmhouses crouch on the horizon, their roofs sagging under winter's weight. You keep your rifle ready, scanning for the sudden flash of movement that could mean another ambush. Mid-afternoon brings a halt near a ridge where the river glints faintly through bare trees. A silver thread on the horizon. Germany lies beyond that water, and the sight draws a quiet murmur from the men. The war is far from over, but the end feels nearer than ever. You and Jenkins share a long look, the Rhine's distant shimmer reflected in his eyes. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say that the wind and the endless crunch of boots can't express. As the column rests, you take stock of the day's march. Your feet are swollen and tender blisters threatening with every step. You massage feeling back into them, then tighten your boots and adjust the straps of your pack. Nearby, Jenkins inspects his rifle movements, careful and practiced. He catches you watching and gives a wry half smile. "One foot in front of the other," he says quietly, repeating the words that have become the company's mantra. You nod, that's how we win. Late in the afternoon, the order to move comes again. The company pushes on toward the next cluster of buildings, an unnamed hamlet crouched in the lowlands. The snow deepens, forcing each man to break trail for the one behind. Twilight gathers as you trudge forward, the sky streaked with violet and ash. Every step is a small victory over fatigue. Every breath a reminder that you are still alive, still moving. As darkness falls, Murphy signals a halt in a stand of pine overlooking the hamlet. No fires tonight. The enemy may be near. You and Jenkins scrape out yet another foxhole, lining it with pine boughs for scant insulation. The routine is familiar now. Dig, settle, share. A blanket can serve heat. Above, the stars burn sharp and cold, indifferent to the struggles below. Jenkins pulls the blanket tighter and leans back, his voice a low murmur. "Think we'll see the Rhine before this is done." "We'll see it," you answer after a moment. "Might even cross it before spring." He exhales a white plume, fading into the night. "When I get home, I'll tell my sisters about all of this. Make sure they know what it took." You glance at him, the faint starlight catching the lines of a face grown older than its years. "They'll listen," you say. "They'll know." The forest around you settles into a brittle quiet. Somewhere beyond the dark trees, the river waits, and beyond it, the final battles. But for now, there is only the cold, the stars, and the steady rhythm of your breath beside Jenkins in the snow. The next morning arrives with a brittle metallic light, the kind that turns every icicle into a blade and every shadow into an ambush. You wake to the crunch of boots on hard snow and the faint clink of metal as men check their weapons. The cold is so sharp it feels alive, biting any skin foolish enough to be uncovered. Lieutenant Murphy's voice carries softly through the frosty air. "Up and ready, we move in 20. He looks like he hasn't slept, but his tone holds the same steady resolve that has carried the company this far. You stretch stiff limbs, feeling every mile and every sleepless night etched into your muscles. Beside you, Jenkins blinks awake, rubbing frost from his eyelashes. Breakfast is the usual mechanical affair, cold. K-rations, a swallow of coffee gone tepid the moment it touches the winter air. No one complains. The only conversation is the low murmur of men checking ammo-lacing boots and adjusting packs. You and Jenkins share a brief glance, no words needed. Another day, another march toward the Rhine. The column moves out beneath a sky the color of lead. Snow squeaks beneath boots in the hush before the wind picks up. Around you, the land wears war's scars, openly churned fields, splintered fences, the husks of farmhouses blackened by shell fire. Occasionally, you pass the twisted carcass of a vehicle or the silent mound of a soldier friend or foe, half hidden by drifting snow. Each marker is a reminder of how narrow the line between survival and oblivion has become. By midday, the column reaches a small rise, where the trees break, revealing the Rhine like a silver band across the horizon. The river gleams under the pale sun, wide and implacable. Beyond it lies the German heartland. A quiet murmur ripples through the ranks. For a moment, even the wind seems to pause as every man takes in the sight. Months of fighting have led to this threshold. Murphy calls a brief halt, letting the men absorb what they see. "That's our next line," he says, evenly pointing toward the far bank. "Crossing won't be easy. The enemy will defend every inch. But this," he sweeps a gloved hand toward the shining river, "this is why we've come." You stand with Jenkins at the crest of the hill, gazing at the water that divides past from future. His breath clouds in the air, his eyes reflecting a strange mix of awe and fatigue. "We made it," he whispers almost to himself. "Almost," you reply. The word hangs between you like the frost in the air. The company descends from the ridge and follows a road etched with frozen wagon ruts toward a cluster of riverside buildings chosen for the night's bivouac. The wind off the Rhine is damp and cutting, finding every gap in your clothing. You hunch deeper into your coat rifle, slung tight, eyes scanning the pale expanse of ice and water. As dusk settles, orders are given to dig in along a low embankment overlooking the river. You and Jenkins scrape out yet another foxhole, muscles protesting after the long march. The earth is rock hard, but you persist until you have a shallow depression that offers at least the illusion of safety. When the work is done, you sit shoulder to shoulder, sharing what little warmth the day has left. Night falls quickly, a curtain of deep blue and black pierced by cold stars. Across the river, the faint glow of distant fires hints at enemy positions. The air smells of water and smoke, a mingling of life and destruction. Around you, the company settles into watch rotations, the soft click of rifle bolts and muted whispers blending with the steady murmur of the Rhine. Jenkins breaks the silence first. "Feels different," he says quietly. "Like the end is close enough to touch." You watch the dark water slide past its surface, reflecting the stars like scattered silver coins. "It's closer," you answer, but not done. For a long time, you both sit without speaking, listening to the low rush of the river and the occasional creak of ice along its banks. The war has brought you here through foxholes and burning villages, through wozen nights and sudden firefights, to this quiet edge of a nation on the brink of collapse. The Rhine whispers in the dark, a promise and a warning. Tomorrow will bring new orders, new dangers, perhaps the crossing itself. But tonight you simply sit the cold seeping into your bones, the rifle a familiar weight across your knees, and Jenkins breathing steadily beside you. The stars wheel overhead. The river flows on indifferent to men and their wars. The Rhine lies silent under a thin winter moon, its wide surface rippling with slow silver currents. In the foxhole, you and Jenkins trade watch in 4-hour shifts, each man trying to steal a little warmth and a few minutes of uneasy sleep. The river's damp breath cuts deeper than any mountain wind, seeping through wool and skin until it settles in your marrow. Every so often you hear the low groan of ice shifting downstream, a reminder that even water wages its own quiet war. At first light, Lieutenant Murphy moves through the lines like a wraith, his boots whispering over crusted snow. "Orders from division," he says in that calm, measured voice that somehow carries to every ear. "We hold this sector until engineers bring the pontoon bridges forward. German rearguards are across the river. Expect probing fire. Stay sharp. The day unfolds in a strange suspension between dread and tedium. Men reinforce foxholes, stack ammunition, and check overlapping fields of fire. You help lay out trip flares along the riverbank, their thin wires hidden under fresh snow. Jenkins works beside you without complaint, his motions efficient and practiced, as if he's aged years in the past few weeks. From across the water come occasional rifle cracks, testing shots, nothing sustained. Each one sends a ripple of tension through the line but fades into silence just as quickly. Around noon, a supply jeep rattles in with more coffee and extra bandoliers. The bitter drink warms your hands and belly, but it can't thaw the unease. Everyone senses that the Germans won't let the crossing happen without a fight. The question isn't if they'll strike, but when. Late afternoon brings a pale sun and a restless wind that carries faint echoes, distant engines, maybe, or the creak of shifting ice. You crouch in your foxhole, scanning the opposite bank through field glasses. Ruined farmhouses crouch among leafless trees, their windows dark and watchful. Somewhere in that frozen landscape, enemy observers are almost certainly doing the same. As dusk falls, Murphy calls a quiet briefing. Scouts report limited movement across the river, likely artillery spotters. Expect harassing fire overnight. Keep low, conserve ammo. Remember, tomorrow we push across. The engineers will start laying the pontoons at first light. He pauses, letting the words sink in. This is the last natural barrier before Germany's heartland. Once we're over, there's no turning back. Night comes heavy and absolute. Clouds swallow the moon and a damp mist rises from the Rhine, thick enough to muffle sound and distort distance. Your breath ghosts in front of you as you settle into the watch. Jenkins leans against the frozen wall of the foxhole, his eyes half-lidded but alert. Think they know we're crossing tomorrow, he whispers. They always know, you murmur back. The hours stretch. Somewhere downstream, a German machine gun chatters briefly, then falls silent. An artillery shell screams across the sky and lands far to the west with a hollow thud. You tighten your grip on the Garand, heart thumping in quiet counterpoint to the river's endless murmur. Just after midnight, the expected barrage begins. Flares burst over the water, bathing the snow in an eerie green light. Mortars follow shells, hissing like angry spirits before exploding along the riverbank. The earth heaves under you. Shards of frozen mud pepper your helmet. Jenkins presses shoulder to shoulder with you, both of you flattened against the cold ground as the night becomes thunder and fire. Hold steady! Murphy's voice cuts through the chaos. Return fire only on confirmed targets. Through the swirling mist, you catch glimpses of white-clad figures darting at the far bank, probing for weaknesses. American rifles crack and reply tracers arcing red across the water. The fight becomes a tense exchange. Short bursts, long silences, the Rhine itself flashing with muzzle flares like a sheet of dark steel. Minutes stretch into an hour. At last, the German fire slackens, then stops altogether, leaving only the hiss of cooling metal and the low rush of the river. You and Jenkins exchange a long breath of relief. Your ears ring, but you're alive. The flares fade and darkness returns, deep and absolute. Murphy moves along the line, his silhouette briefly haloed by the dying glow of a flare. Good work, he says quietly. Get what rest you can. We cross at dawn. You settle back into the foxhole, muscles trembling from the aftershock of adrenaline. Jenkins wipes soot from his face with a shaking hand. Tomorrow, he whispers more to himself than to you. Tomorrow, across the Rhine, into Germany, the end of one ordeal, the start of another. You pull the blanket tighter around both of you, feeling the river's cold breath swirl above the trench. Around you, the company settles into an uneasy silence, the kind that comes only after surviving what could have been the final hour. The Rhine flows on dark and implacable, carrying ice and moonlight toward the sea. And you wait, breathing, listening, gathering strength for the crossing that will decide everything. The first pale wash of dawn creeps across the river, turning the mist to drifting gold. Your eyes snap open at the muted clank of engineers readying the pontoon boats. Frost clings to your coat and helmet. Every joint aches as you push upright in the foxhole. Jenkins stirs beside you, rubbing his hands to bring life back to stiff fingers. Around you, men wordlessly check weapons and tighten gear. There's no chatter, only the quiet rhythm of preparation before a decisive move. Lieutenant Murphy walks the line, his breath visible in the icy air. "This is it," he says, voice low but carrying. The engineers have lanes marked. Company B leads the first wave. Stay tight, keep low, and move fast. Germans may try to hit the crossing, but artillery will cover us. His eyes meet yours briefly, a silent reminder of how far you've come together through snow, fire, and darkness. The company forms along the riverbank as combat engineers slide their pontoon sections into the slow, steel-gray water. The faint slap of current against metal echoes like a drum beat. Across the Rhine, smoke from enemy positions curls upward, a warning that resistance waits. American artillery begins its methodical barrage, dull, distant booms rolling across the valley, shaking the frozen earth under your boots. You and Jenkins climb into a rocking boat with 6 others. The river's breath rises cold and damp, smelling faintly of mud and iron. The engineer at the tiller pushes off and the current seizes the craft, carrying it toward the far shore. Every creak of wood sounds thunderous in the still morning. You keep your garand across your knees, finger-ready eyes fixed on the dark tree line ahead. Halfway across German guns wake. Mortars thump, shells whistle overhead and smash into the water with violent splashes. One pontoon to your left erupts in a geyser of spray, the men aboard vanishing in an instant. You duck low, heart hammering as shrapnel hisses into the river around you. American artillery answers in thunderous waves, churning the opposite bank into smoke and flame. "Keep rowing, Murphy," shouts from another craft, his voice fierce above the chaos. The engineers dig their oars harder and the boat lurches forward. Bullets snap past in sharp, angry lines. Jenkins grips the side so tightly his knuckles blanch, but his jaw stays set. He's not the green kid who joined a week ago. He's a soldier now. The boat grinds into the far shore. You leap into knee-deep water, numbed by winter, wading through mud and ice as bullets hiss overhead. The company scrambles up the embankment, spreading into the tree line where smoke and fog weave a ghostly curtain. You drop to one knee, rifle at the ready, heart racing. Around you, men form a skirmish line while engineers drag more pontoons behind. German fire sputters, then fades as the American barrage pounds their positions. When it lifts, you advance in bounding rushes, cover, move, cover through the shattered woods. A bunker appears ahead, half collapsed and smoking. 2 dazed German soldiers stumble out with hands raised, their faces gray in the cold dawn. Jenkins covers them while you signal for the prisoners to be taken back across the river. By mid-morning, Company B secures a narrow foothold on the east bank. The Rhine, once a distant dream, now flows behind you. Fresh units pour across the pontoons, the steady drum of boots and engines marking the unstoppable advance. For the first time in weeks, a spark of something like hope flickers through the fatigue. You glance at Jenkins. His uniform is spattered with mud, his eyes bloodshot but alive with quiet pride. "We made it," he says softly. You nod, feeling the weight of every frozen night, every desperate firefight that brought you here. "Yeah." You reply, the word carrying all the exhaustion and stubborn triumph of a soldier who has survived to see Germany's heartland open before him. Above the river, the winter sun climbs higher, catching on the water like molten silver. The war is not over, but the momentum is now irreversible. One foot in front of the other, you and Company B move inland, leaving the Rhine behind, another barrier, crossed another chapter of history etched in cold and fire.